Myself and my mom recently discussed weird experiences we had in the house I grew up in. I always knew something was up with the house from the time I was a kid to the end of high school when I moved out. But I never knew the extent of my parents' experiences because I was always too embarrassed to bring it up. My mom ended up telling me a story of something that happened when I was a baby that left me speechless. It involved me physically being removed from my crib by something they couldn't see. My mom told me that when I was a baby, there was one night where her and my father were woken up by the alarm of the baby monitor going off in their room. The baby monitor had 3 buttons: on and off, call, and alarm. It worked as a normal baby monitor, basically as an open channel walkie-talkie between my nursery and their room so they could hear everything. But the way the alarm button worked, it had to be physically held down to set off a loud ringing noise on the other end of the monitor in my parents' room. Meaning one would physically have to hold their finger down on the button to set it off. And the second they lifted their finger, the alarm would cease. As they were awoken by the alarm and rushed to my room, not even thinking about how the alarm button was being pressed, just worried that I needed them, they got to my room and they opened the door to see me on the floor in the corner of the room throwing up. After consoling me and cleaning me up, they started to panic and realized that they had no idea how I would have gotten out of my crib on my own. Furthermore, they realized that even if I did manage to get out of the crib, there was no way I could have reached the alarm on the baby monitor that was sitting on top of the dresser. To go along with the baby monitor, my parents also had a CCTV-style camera hardwired in my room so that they could see me through an input on their TV in their room. This was 1998. My dad immediately went to check the camera that continuously recorded and deleted every 30 minutes to try and figure out how I got out of the crib, but they found that it hadn't recorded anything. My mom had experienced things in the home to the point where she started keeping a journal, but this was the first time anything physical had happened. She believes that whatever it was a protector that pressed the alarm to let them know I was sick and needed help. There's no previous history on the property, as my dad is the developer that built the neighborhood. They decided to pick a house and move in when my mom got pregnant during the construction of the subdivision. So there's no history of deaths on the property, as it was a forest before the neighborhood was developed. I just wanted to share the story and get some opinions of what you all think the intentions may have been. My mother's consensus is that it must have been a guardian angel, but growing up in that room, it never felt that way. I had insomnia and would wake up throughout the night, until I switched bedrooms in the basement at 15. The usual things kids are scared of, like under the bed and the closet, frightened me as a kid, but that all went away when I switched rooms. I used to hear knocking from the wall behind my bed, where we had a small storage room, and my dad always convinced me it was the squirrels or critters getting into the attic. There was even a bird's nest in the gutter right outside of the house, so it was easy to pass off the knocking as animals making noise. The most frightening reoccurring thing that happened is I would wake up to my closet door being open when it was closed when I went to bed. I also was a chronic sleepwalker until I switched rooms. It got to the point where my parents would put up 2 baby gates outside of my room and at the top of the stairs. It was to keep me from wandering, because one night I made it downstairs and deactivated the alarm system. My mom heard me go down the stairs and stopped me as I was walking out the front door. The frightening thing about it is I was at an age where I could reach the alarm and didn't even know what the alarm code was to disarm it. After that night, they reinstalled the baby gates from when I was little and put a bell at the top of the stairs so they could hear if it moved. I am a native New Yorker that is currently living in Portland, Oregon. My son Ryan had just been born in 1984. My brother-in-law Ricky called me to congratulate me on his birth and tell me that he was proud of me. This was my second child, and he thought I was doing a great job. Ricky and his brother married my sisters, both at different times, and both families were now living in the same duplex. 2 weeks after I talked to him, Ricky was off the night, and he was going to a party. It was a much-deserved break from working his main difficult job, and his second job was a drummer in a band, as he was so talented. Anyway, My sister was 4 months pregnant with their third child. She told Ricky she'd leave the light on for him. Little Ricky always slept in their bed, until his dad came home and put him in his bed. My sister hears the door open and looks to see Ricky, completely silhouetted by the light, standing in the door to the bedroom. Ricky walks over to her, and he bends down to kiss her. His light blue eyes were shining through the darkness of the room. He reaches over, lifts little Ricky up, and she watches him walk out of the room with him. When she rolls back over, she sees it's midnight. She felt him get in bed. After 2 a.m, there is a furious knocking on her door downstairs. It is unrelenting. Finally, she gets up and answers it. The door is rushed by her father-in-law and 2 New York State troopers. Her father-in-law is making her sit down, and they tell her that Ricky and his best friend Herbie were killed in a motorcycle accident earlier that night. She tells them that's impossible, as Ricky came home at midnight and put little Ricky in bed. She saw him, he kissed her, and she felt him get in bed after putting their son to bed. So both her father-in-law and the cops are freaked out, because there is another brother that lives next door who does take his brother's motorcycle out from time to time. But he has already left for his bakery delivery job, and so there's confusion. Could it be him instead? They could have the wrong brother's ID. She goes upstairs and he's not in their bed, so she starts turning all the lights on in the room and running around screaming for him. She even went to the basement looking for him, but to no avail. During this time, the cops clarify that the other brother is in fact at work and alive. She at this point is freaking out. She keeps screaming that she saw his blue eyes and they must be crazy. Unfortunately, she was to find out that they hit a station wagon head-on. Herbie was on the back of the bike. This intersection was notorious for accidents. Their deaths are why a light was put in, and speed limit signs as well. Ricky went halfway into the car's motor at a high rate of speed. He was still on the bike, and the rupture of the tank caused him to burn, and the car to catch on fire. Herbie was thrown from the motorcycle, both of his legs severed. Neither of them survived. It wasn't until the father-in-law went to view his son's body to confirm it was him. That's when he noticed the only thing on Ricky that wasn't burned were his blue eyes. To this day, she says he came home. This happened to me around 20 years ago. I was 10 years old, maybe a little younger, and I owned this radio CD player with 3 settings. Radio, off, and CD. The CD mode had a standby light, a red dot shining like a big, scary eye, and I absolutely hated it. I was very careful, always turning it off, because the red eye scared me whenever I was trying to sleep. I had never shut my light off with the standby light still being on, but this night I did. Now, I don't know what I was thinking. Probably, stop being a baby. It's just a light, go to sleep. But I realized I'd forgotten to turn it off. I shut off my light anyway and just tried to sleep. But my eyes kept drifting to the light. After a while of discomfort, I pulled my cover over my head, but the unease just made me peek. I looked with one eye towards the light. In the shadow around the light, I saw a hand. A shadow hand with claws that almost made it look like fingers twice as long as human fingers, reaching out to grab my radio. I was scared, but certain I was seeing things because of it. I pulled the covers down to see things clearly. Nothing. Now scared out of my mind, I pulled the covers back over my face. Had the hand moved, or was I hallucinating? No, I had to look again. Once again, peeking. I saw the hand pulling on my radio. For some reason, I to this day don't know, this dance repeated 3 or 4 times before I just hid under my covers and somehow fell asleep. But that's just a dream, or the light's playing tricks on a poor, scared kid's mind, right? I would have said so, if it hadn't been for what I discovered the next day. You see, my desk was split into 3 pieces. I always made sure that the radio must not cross between them. It must stand with all feet on one of the pieces. Well, when I woke up the next day, the radio was standing over the crack separating the two pieces of furniture. During the night, the radio did move, and to this day, I can't find any reasonable explanation for it moving. If not that ghostly clawed hand that curiously wanted to know what the red glow was.